One of the biggest epidemics out there that I am seeing over and over again in practice is around Candida. Now, what's Candida? Have you heard of it? Do you even know what it is? So many people think it's only about yeast infections in your vaginal area. Not true. Candida is a yeast. It lives naturally in our gut and different areas of our body. But here's the problem. We are seeing an epidemic, an escalation of the amount of Candida overgrowth across all ages, whether we're talking about kids, women, men, adults, or seniors, it doesn't matter. I am seeing Candida overgrowth over and over again. And it's not just me. A quick scan of the literature and the research shows that this is an issue that so many people are aware of. There is study after study talking about Candida overgrowth, the rise of Candida albicans. What are we going to do about Candida resistance, meaning it's not responding to traditional antifungal medications? So this is a real issue, and I really want you to understand it because it's linked to so many different medical conditions. So hang with me for just a moment, and I'm going to walk you through how Candida works. Now, remember the gut. We've talked about this before, this teeming workshop, factory, however you want to imagine it. Lots of little bugs in there doing their job, trying to make sure that everything is getting done. But when that balance of gut bacteria is thrown off, well, everything goes astray. Things like leaky gut can cause it to go off, poor food, and we're going to get into that in just a second, stress, hormone imbalances. All of these lead to Candida overgrowth. Now, here's what you may not know. Candida overgrowth causes a host of symptoms. Let's start with the science. When Candida overgrows, and by the way, it's not just about Candida albicans. There are actually some other types of Candida as well. Big names, Galbrata, Tropicalis. Again, I don't expect you to remember all of that. But here's what we know. When Candida overgrows, a couple of things are happening. First of all, the levels of histamine in your body go up. Are you one of those folks that always have an issue with different foods, or the spring is just a miserable time for you? Well, you might have Candida. Candida will also cause vague symptoms like brain fog or feeling anxious or depressed or slow. It will cause bloating, constipation, in some cases diarrhea. It really seems to be this wonder sort of bacteria once it's out of balance. But one of the biggest issues with Candida is not only in how it's disrupting the microbiome, how it leads to all these different symptoms and conditions, but it's at the root of spiking insulin, spiking dirty hormones, things like androgens and estrone, and at the end of the day, leading to inflammation. And that link between Candida, the gut microbiome, and inflammation is one that I think each and every one of us need to know today because it is an epidemic. I talk a lot about inflammation in this video here. Make sure you check it out. But first, let's really master Candida. Okay, so now you know what Candida is. You have an understanding, right? Bacteria in the gut is actually a yeast, really overgrows when the rest of the bacteria are not doing what they're supposed to do, and is absolutely disrupted by everything from stress, your hormone changes, we're going to get into that in just a moment too, poor diet, and definitely the environment. I'm going to break all of this down for you, but let's first talk about diet because that's what we have, I think, the greatest control over, right? We can master, and I was looking at a quote the other day. It was basically, if you can master what's on the end of your fork, you're almost 80% on your way to wellness, and that's pretty powerful. So here's the thing with Candida. Our current Western diet, fast food, processed food, convenience food, packaged foods, disrupt the microbiome. And that disruption of the microbiome in turn leads to more Candida. That's why we see it in shocking amounts in our teenagers who they're really hard to wrangle. I've got two, really tough to wrangle them and get them on a healthy diet. Or we see it in underserved communities where there are food deserts, right? And they're just grabbing whatever they can to nurture and take care of themselves. So we know that Candida overgrows in those conditions. Now, Candida will also overgrow, though, if we're getting too much sugar, right? Too much sugar in our diet, and that is any type of sugar. It's brown sugar or white sugar or processed sugar or artificial sugars. It doesn't matter. It is disruptive to the microbiome and causes an overgrowth of yeast, causes Candida overgrowth, usually Candida albicans. So sugar is a big one, but there are a few others that we absolutely need to talk about. Alcohol is a huge one. Over and over again, I meet patients who are doing everything right, but they are drinking too much alcohol. And too much nowadays is over about 2 to 4 drinks a week. So really reducing alcohol is very important for the reduction of Candida. And in fact, you can take all the things in the world for Candida, but if we can't bring the sugar and the alcohol down, you're only refeeding it and keeping that cycle of Candida overgrowth. Now, after sugar and alcohol, the next category to really tackle is dairy. Too much dairy, again, will overgrow Candida, especially dairy that's hard to digest, right? Yogurt, kefir, those may be okay. But dairy like a hard cheese or ice cream or milk, which is a little bit harder on the gut, that in turn can lead to more Candida. So if you're out there and you know you have Candida, or you've been told you have Candida, or you're suspicious, right? And we'll talk about how to diagnose that as well. Remember, if you don't want to do anything else and you just want 3 quick things to do, cut out the sugar, reduce your alcohol, and let's go dairy free, then maybe you're ready for a little bit more. The next category when it comes to your diet is removing an excessive amount of grain. Now, I'm going to warn you because I've been through this in practice with my patients. And remember, I've been seeing patients for over 15 years at Center Spring MD, really working with patients, trying to curate their treatment plans, their diet, finding the best sort of remedies for them. And in my early years, I would hand them this beautiful plan that would say, follow a Candida diet. Do you know how hard and how bad a Candida diet is? It is so restrictive and it would be so demotivating that many patients would just fall off or give up and just say, this is impossible, there's nothing they can do about it. I don't want you to do that. That's why I'm really giving you graduated steps, right? So sugar, alcohol, and dairy are your first sort of pillars of really trying to cut those out to manage Candida. And if you're ready for more, then start to look at the amount of grain you're getting in, and that too can play a role in overgrowth of Candida. Now, all of that is caged and coached in this idea that you've removed packaged foods, processed foods, and fast foods, right? Because we know with the pesticide load and the load in many of those foods, you're going to have issues with Candida to begin with. So that's the dietary strategy when it comes to managing Candida. Let's talk next about things you might be able to add in or to take that may help you balance Candida. Now remember, this idea of Candida and Candida overgrowth is all about managing the gut bacteria and managing the integrity of your gut lining. I talk a lot about leaky gut in this video right here. Check it out if you get a chance or if you want to dive deeper into that particular topic. Now, how do we rebalance the gut microbiome or reduce the amount of Candida in our system? Well, there are a couple of different things you can do. We definitely want to add probiotic rich foods. So I love adding some fermented foods. So we've got some examples here. So this is kefir, which you can take maybe a few times a week, or a teaspoon or so of sauerkraut. You could also do that 3 or 4 times a week. But notice how I don't want you to do it every day. And there's a reason. What we have found is that when people are doing too many of these fermented foods all throughout the week, right, getting 2 or 3 servings or doing them every single day, at some point that actually contributes to Candida as well. So we have to be a little bit careful with that. I would probably put kombucha into that category too. So in addition to bringing in some of these fermented foods a couple times a week, kind of cycling them so that you don't have that overgrowth of Candida, the other missing ingredient in a good Candida balancing plan is healthy fat. So many people for so many years have been fat phobic. And what we are understanding about fat is that fat actually helps to balance the microbiome. It helps to subdue Candida. In particular, fats have butyrate, which help the entire process. So you can get that from medium chain triglycerides and things like avocado or coconut oil. You can also get it in a little bit of ghee if you add that into your daily diet. All right, moving on from food, are there things you can take? Now, there are some natural herbs that work beautifully for helping you to suppress and manage Candida. Garlic is a great example of that. Adding in a clove a day is a way to help you manage Candida, and even taking garlic as a supplement may be helpful as well. And speaking of supplements, again, I like to pull, remember, into that East-West toolbox and really merge together different systems of medicine to help us all find answers. So one of the things I love to do if I'm dealing with a patient that's got Candida is bringing in some anti-Candida herbs and different products that help. I love using oregano oil. That's a great one for really minimizing Candida, maybe a dropper 1 to 2 times a day. I love using Bioin. Bioin plays a role in a really important concept. We haven't talked about this yet, but Candida builds biofilms. Biofilms are this idea that you create this wall around the bacteria so that nothing really penetrates, and that allows the bacteria or the yeast to live on for as long as they want. But Bioin is one of those products that comes in and does help to disrupt that biofilm. So that's why I love using Bioin when it comes to Candida. Now, in addition to Bioin or oregano oil or garlic, I like berberine. Berberine I've been using for lots of different purposes. A lot of you know about berberine because we've been talking about it as an Ozempic alternative, right? But berberine actually helps to reduce Candida as well. And no surprise, because now you understand the link between Candida, high insulin, and inflammation. That's why berberine is helpful. All right, let's talk about one more. Another one I like a lot are a blend of these herbs. So there's a product that has both oregano oil, it has pau d'arco, has garlic, it has a little berberine in it. This is something called candibactin. You'll see it from different companies as candibactin ARBR. That also helps to reduce and minimize Candida. So this is sort of the natural toolbox, right? Modifying your diet, taking the bad stuff out, putting the good stuff in, really thinking about the pillars of a good Candida diet, adding in maybe some of these natural herbs and supplements for Candida. But sometimes we have a patient that's pretty severe. They're having a really strong Candida flare. And we know that from testing, from their symptoms, and even, here's a hack, looking at their tongue. That's right, in Chinese medicine, remember, you can look at your tongue and get a good idea about what's going on with your body. And oftentimes, the labs will prove it. So if you've got that thick white coating on your tongue, there's a good chance you might be dealing with Candida. So if this is something that we find in the patient, maybe you're just struggling and you're struggling with brain fog or bloating or constipation, or you're itchy, or you've got eczema or psoriasis, all of these are linked to Candida, then I will actually prescribe an antifungal. So my first pick has historically been either nystatin or fluconazole. But a quick check of the literature, the research is showing not only is Candida on the rise, but fluconazole resistance is on the rise, meaning Candida is no longer responding very well to fluconazole. What does that mean? And here's what the research is saying. This is what we've seen in practice too. It's a lot of merging and mixing. It's taking a pharmaceutical like fluconazole and marrying it to something like berberine or Bioin. And that merging or mixing, whether it's medication and Chinese herbs or medication and an Ayurvedic herb or an oil, is what is bringing about success. So I don't want any of you struggling with Candida or confused by it. I want you to understand what it is and how prevalent it is. And you can diagnose it, whether it's by looking at your tongue, doing testing, doing stool testing. There's so many different ways to diagnose it. But understand that there's a host of symptoms that goes with Candida. And it always starts with food and what's at the end of your fork and moves on from there. All right, I post new videos every week. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys soon.